Hello, and welcome back to another Read With Me session. I'm yours truly, Isabel Bedell, and I'm here to read with you an amazing chapter on the psychology of money, which is this book. We are on chapter number 14. It's called You'll Change. And if you have not began to read this book, if you haven't started, make sure to go do so. Make sure to start. It's definitely one of those books that has amazing one-liners. It brings up awareness, and it also allows you to see things in a different light. And if intelligence is a commodity, thinking is actually what will get you to be valuable in the marketplace. Thinking will allow you to separate from others, and thinking will allow you to make reasonable and rational decisions based on information that is thoughtful for your life and for your future. Hope that makes sense, and it will make sense if you read this book. Okay, we're in chapter number 14. You'll change. Long-term planning is harder than it seems because people's goals and desires change over time. I grew up with a friend who came from neither privilege nor natural intellect, but was the hardest working guy I knew. These people have a lot to teach because they have unfiltered understanding of every inch of the road to success. His life's mission and dream as a teenager was to be a doctor. And to say the odds were stacked against him is being charitable. No reasonable person at the time would consider it a possibility, but he pushed. And a decade older than his classmates, he eventually became a doctor. How much fulfillment comes from starting from nothing, bulldozing your way to the top of medical school and achieving one of the most noble professions against all odds. I spoke to him a few years ago. The conversation went like this. Me. Long time no talk. How you him. Awful career. Me. Well, and then him. Awful career, man. This went on for 10 minutes. The stress and hours had worn him into the ground. He seemed as disappointed in where he is today as he was driven toward where he wanted to be 15 years ago. An underpinning of psychology is that people are poor forecasters of the future of their future selves. Where is my highlighter when I need it? Imagining a goal is easy and fun. Imagining a goal in the context of the realistic life stresses that grow with competitive pursuits is something entirely different. This has a big impact on our ability to plan for future financial goals. Every 5-year-old wants to drive a tractor when they grow up. Few jobs look better in the eyes of a young boy whose idea of a good job begins and ends with vroom vroom, beep beep, and big tractor, here I come. Then many grow up and realize that driving a tractor maybe isn't the best career. Maybe they want something more prestigious or lucrative. So as a teenager, they dream of being a lawyer. Now they think they know. Their plan is set. Law school and its costs, here we come. Then, as a lawyer, they face such long working hours that they rarely see their families. So perhaps they take on a lower paying job with flexible hours, and then they realize that childcare is so expensive that it consumes most of their paycheck. And then they opt to stay at home as a parent. And this, they conclude, is finally the right choice. Then at the age of 70, they realize that a lifetime of staying home means they're unprepared to afford retirement. And many of us wind through life on a similar trajectory. Only 27% of college grads have a job related to their major, according to the Federal Reserve, and 29% of stay-at-home parents have a college degree. Few likely regret their education, of course, but we would acknowledge that a new parent in their 30s may think about life goals in a way their 18-year-old self making career goals would never imagine. Long-term financial planning is essential, but things change, both the world around you and your own goals and desires. It is one thing to say, we don't know what the future holds. It's another to admit that you yourself Don't know today what you will even want in the future. In the future, as that few of us do. It's hard to make the enduring long-term decisions when your view of what you'll want in the future is likely to shift. The end of history illusion is the psychologists call the tendency for people to keenly be aware of how much they've changed in the past, but to underestimate how much their personalities, desires, and goals are likely to change in the future. Harvard psychologist Daniel Gilbert once said, at every stage of our lives, we make decisions that will profoundly influence the lives of people we're going to become. And then we become those people. We're not always thrilled with the decisions we made. So young people pay good money to get tattoos removed that teenagers paid good money to get. Middle-aged people rush to divorce people who young adults rush to marry. Older adults work hard to lose what middle-aged adults worked hard to gain. On and on and on. All of us, he said, are walking around with an illusion that history, our personal history, has just come to an end, that we have just recently become the people that we were always meant to be and will for the rest of our lives. We tend to never learn the lesson. And Gilbert's research shows that from the age of 18 to 68, we underestimate how much will actually change in the future. You can see this can have an impact, a long-term impact on your financial plan. And Charlie Munger says that the first rule of compounding is to never interrupt it unnecessarily. But how do you not interrupt a money plan, careers, investments, spending, budget, whatever, when what you want out of life changes? It's hard. Part of the reason people like Ronald Reed, the wealthy janitor we met earlier in the book, and Warren Buffett become so successful is because they kept doing the same thing for decades on end, letting compounding run wild. But many of us evolve so much over time, our lifetime, that we don't want to keep doing the same thing for decades on end or anything close to it. So rather than one 80-something year lifespan, or money has perhaps a 4 distinct 20-year blocks. I know young people who purposely live austere lives with little income, and they're perfectly happy with it. Then there are those who work their tail off to pay for a life of luxury, and they're perfectly happy with that. Both have risks, the former risk being unprepared to raise a family or fund retirement. The latter risk, regret, is that you spent your youthful and healthy years in a cubicle. There is no easy solution to this problem, and tell a 5-year-old boy who should he be, a lawyer or a tractor driver, and he will disagree with every cell in his body. But there are 2 things to keep in mind when making what you think are long-term decisions. We should avoid the extreme ends of financial planning, assuming you'll be happy with a very low income, or choosing to work endless hours in pursuit of a high one increases the odds that you'll only find one day yourself at a point of regret. The fuel of the end of history illusion is that people adapt to most circumstances. So the benefits of an extreme plan, the simplicity of having hardly anything, or the thrill of having almost everything, wears off. But the downside of those extremes, not being able to afford retirement or looking back at a life spent devoted to chasing dollars, becomes an enduring regret. Regrets are especially painful when you abandon a previous plan and feel like you have to ruin the other because of the other directions twice as fast to make up for lost time. Compounding works best when you can give a plan years or decades to grow. This is, wow, that line alone. Compounding works best when you can give plans years or decades to grow. This is true for not only savings, but careers and relationships. Endurance is key. And when you consider our tendency to change, we are over time. Balance at every point in our life becomes a strategy to avoid future regret and endurance, and encourage endurance. Compounding works when you have when you can give a plan years or decades to grow. This is true for not only savings, but careers and relationships. Endurance is key. And when you consider our tendency to change who we are over time, balance at every point in your life becomes a strategy to avoid future regret and endurance and encourage endurance. Aiming at every point in your working life to have moderate annual savings, moderate free time, and no more than a moderate commute, and at least moderate time with your family increases the odds of being able to stick with a plan and avoid regret than if any one of those things fall to the extreme sides of the spectrum. We should always come to accept the reality of changing our minds. Some of the most miserable workers I've met are people who stayed loyal to a career only because it's the field they picked when they were deciding on a college major at age 18. And when you accept the end of history illusion, you realize that the odds of picking a job when you're not old enough to drink that you will still enjoy when you're old enough to qualify for social security are very low. The trick is to accept the reality of change and move on as soon as possible. Jason Zweig, the Wall Street Journal investment columnist, worked with psychologist Daniel Kahneman on writing Kahneman's book, Thinking, Fast and Slow. Zweig once told a story about a personality quirk of Kahneman's that served him well. Nothing amazed me more about Danny than his ability to detonate what we had just done. Zweig wrote, he and Kahneman could work endlessly on a chapter, but the next thing you know, Kahneman sends a version so utterly transformed that it is unrecognizable. It begins differently. It ends differently. It incorporates anecdotes and evidence that you would have never thought of. And it draws on research that you've never heard of. When I asked Danny how he could start something again as if we had never written in earlier drafts, Swag continued, and he said the words that I've never, ever forgotten. I have no sunk regrets. I have no sunk regrets. Sunk costs means anchoring decisions to past efforts that can't be refunded. Sunk costs are anchoring decisions to past efforts that can't be refunded. This is the devil in a world where people change over time. They make our future selves prisoners to our past, our different selves. It's the equivalent of a stranger making major life decisions for you. Embracing the idea that financial goals made when you were a different person should be abandoned without mercy versus put on life support and dragged on can be a very good strategy to minimize future regret. And the quicker it's done, the sooner you can get back to compounding. Next, let's talk about compounding's price of admission. And that is where we go into chapter 15, which is nothing's free. Everything has a price, but all prices appear on labels. That's going to be a good one. That's going to be a really good one. And I freaking love this. Sunk costs. Anchoring decisions to past efforts that can't be refunded. That is what it is. That is what is considered a devil in a world where people are changing over time. Wow. That has been one of my favorite lines thus far. And I'm definitely one of those people that, like, if I make a decision, I go all in on that decision. And if something changes along the way, I'm like taken off course because like my focus is on one thing. But I'm also the type of person that is extremely contrarian, where I'm literally going forward on one path, one direction, one thing, and then all of a sudden an amazing idea comes to me that's like can blow this one focus out of proportion. So I'm gonna really use this in my future and in my present, where it's like sunk costs. Asking myself, is this decision or this new idea a sunk cost? Well, I treat this as a anchoring decision to past efforts that can't be refunded. Am I working with a devil in a world where I'm changing over time? You know, am I making my future self a prisoner to a decision that I can make today? I'm going to be different in the future. Can this hold up to my future self? Asking myself these questions will allow me to make like more smarter, more wiser decisions versus being so tight and not being able to be as flexible as I need to be in the future. So I'm excited to get into the next chapter of this book. Super excited for you and all the blessings heading your way. And if you've had an epiphany, if you've received value from this particular video, make sure to hit like. Absolutely love your attention, your response to what we're creating here at Billionaire Red, because it takes billions of people to make this reality. Take this vision of empowering billions of people all over the world with personal financial freedom. It doesn't just come through me. You know, we need you. So I'll talk to you soon. Have a blessed day. Hit the like if you got value, only if you got value. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.